Dr. David Janda. You can find all his work on davejanda.com. You can catch him on his radio show, Operation Freedom. It's on Sunday from 4 to 6. You can also catch him on his YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. I'll be putting all the links at the bottom of the video. And I'd like to welcome Dave Janda to the X22 Report Spotlight. Dave, welcome to the Spotlight.
Dave, thanks for having me back on your great platform. And thank you for coming on our platform in Operation Freedom. Every time you come on the radio show, we're inundated with responses of, you got to get that Dave from X22 back on right away. You were just on this past Sunday and we're a huge hit. And thanks for everything you do. I know you take a lot of grief for putting it all out there, Dave, but thanks for what you do and how you do it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It was really a lot of fun. And thank you for everything that you do. Thanks for having the radio show. Thanks for putting out all this work and interviewing all these different people like Barbara Flynn Redgate and many others. I want to just start off with the coronavirus because the mainstream media, first, let me just say, it started in China. That was the epicenter of it all. Now, a lot of people think that there was a chemical plant, a biological weapon plant where this came from, but it started in China. And then it spread out in the mainstream media. They're pushing this like there's no tomorrow. And we can already see that there's an effect on the stock market with news articles coming out saying the global economy could be affected and we could see a complete disaster. I just wanted to get your take on what you think this coronavirus is.
Well, a couple things. When it first came out, and I got in a lot of trouble for this about almost 2 months ago. When it first came out about the coronavirus, it was stated that, well, there's this Henan seafood market in Wuhan, China. And, well, it's an open air market that involves live animals that are killed and are eaten. And the lamestream media, if you will, put it all on, well, people consume bat soup or snake soup or whatever. And this was the running mantra throughout all channels, not on YouTube. I'm talking about on the bought off lamestream fake media, that this has been occurring for how many hundreds of years in China, right? And now all of a sudden this happens, right? And in fact, Dave, if you look at this whole coronavirus issue, there are several doors you could open and say, okay, this is the door I believe is the right door. One is, well, this all started from somebody consuming bat soup or snake soup, and it was contaminated with the virus. Okay, let's say door one. Door two would be that, well, there is a weapons lab, what's called a BSL-4, which is the highest type of containment laboratory in Wuhan, not actually very far, I think 500 yards from this seafood market, right? And they were doing work on viruses. It's been documented and it's been ongoing for several years. And one concern is, well, it accidentally escaped. Can that happen? Okay, yeah, it can. It could. So that's door two. Door three is that the virus was being worked on in a bioweapons manner at this laboratory in Wuhan, and it didn't accidentally escape. That it was allowed to permeate into the community and city of Wuhan by, this is door three, by Western intelligence sources. That's door three. Door four is bioweapons lab. This is where the virus was generated. It was deliberately released into the community, into the city of Wuhan by the Chinese government. Door four. Now, here's where I got in trouble. I said, as far as door one, bat soup, close it. I'm not going in that room. I don't buy it. Door two, accidental release, possibility, I'm closing that door and leaving it maybe an inch open. Door three, I don't have any evidence or any of my sources or contacts tell me that door three was the right answer, that being deliberate release by Western intelligence sources. But we're not going to close it. We're going to leave it an inch open. And door four, if I had to choose a door, would be the door I'd go into. Now, here's why. Many people got down on me, Dave, because I said I believe this was a targeted bioweapons act, that the virus was developed in a bioweapon manner. Now, why do I feel that way? If you look at some of the medical studies, and granted, the studies are short-term and they're small sample size, but a convincing pieces of evidence that I have reviewed from a medical standpoint tell me the following, that virus was a bioweapon, is a bioweapon, that it might not have initially been developed in that lab, but it was brought to that lab. There are reports that it came through Winnipeg, through the WPL lab. There were reports that it came from Saudi Arabia to the WPL lab or NPL lab in Winnipeg, Canada, and then transferred into China. There was some issues with Chinese espionage of getting the virus introduced in the lab so it could be worked upon. There are some folks that say, well, this professor at Harvard was involved in some work with Wuhan. There's a link there. There's a link coming out of North Carolina. I get all of that. But the bottom line is, I believe it was a bioweapon. Now, here's why. If you look at this virus and how it attacks the body, it in particularly goes after lung tissue. There are different types of cells in the lung. Let's call them the little saccules in the lung, the little balloons in the lung that exchange air are called the villi. And that's where the sac opens up and blood comes through and the oxygen is transported. There are receptors in these cells called angiotensin converting enzyme factors receptors in some of the cells, the type 2 cells. The Asian population has a 5 times higher rate of having these receptors in their lungs as opposed to the Caucasian population, the African population. And this virus specifically binds on those receptor sites. So it appears that when this virus was developed, cooked, if you will, it was made into a weapon that was more specific for the Asian population because it attaches to these receptors that are 5 times more common in the Asian population. Now, add to that, there are studies out there that show if anyone smokes, Asian, Caucasian, Black, anyone who smokes, those receptors also go up in your lungs. In China, 95% roughly of the male population smokes. So if the way the medical studies look at this virus, they appear to be honed down to target the Asian population, and the fact and folks that are smokers are more prone to have this attack their lung tissue. Okay, that tells me that this is more of a targeted weapon toward the Asian population. Now, you add to that environmental aspects. So one environmental aspect, Dave, is smoking. Another that can affect the lungs to make you more vulnerable is pollution. We all know about the pollution problem universally throughout China. And in addition to that, and here's where people say this is conspiratorial, but it's actually factually based. I did a series of interviews. You mentioned the interviews I did. I did a series of interviews with Frank Clegg, who's the former president of Microsoft Canada. Frank Clegg has taken on the tech world when it comes to electromagnetic frequencies and radiation. I'm not going to mention the particular G because if we say that, we'll immediately be shot down in the YouTube searches. But there are electromagnetic frequencies and radiation that is being rolled out across the world. And in fact, if you look at Wuhan, they were about in 2018, they started to roll out this new cellular system, let's just call it. And as of the fall of 2019, it was completely operational. The city was smothered in this electromagnetic radiation. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because when I had this discussion with Frank Clegg in the past, Frank spoke about the health effects of this electromagnetic frequencies and radiation, and 2 of which were on the immune system, in other words, that fights infection, it adversely affects it, and 2 was on the respiratory system. Also, it has effects on the skin, it has effects on the cardiovascular system, the heart, arrhythmia issues, but big effects on the lung. So you add this environmental factor of pollution, then you add this electromagnetic radiation issues, frequency issues that can make the lungs more vulnerable. Add to it that the virus is targeting individuals who are Asian just because of of the makeup of their lungs and these receptors, and the fact that they're smokers. And you add all that up, and what you get, Dave, is a targeted bioweapon. Now, Dave, many people will say, well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that the Chinese government would not target their own people? They would not take their own people down. And to that I say, Mao Zedong. What did he kill? 40 million people? Of his own people. And let's face it, Dave, maybe it's a pure coincidence, but I'm a kind of guy that thinks there are very few coincidences in life, right? But if you look at when this virus started to rear its head, it was right when the freedom movement was gaining huge ground in Hong Kong and then spreading into the mainland of China. And tell me, Dave, have you heard any reports of the freedom movement in Hong Kong or mainland China in the past month and a half since the virus really got legs?
No, I have not.
And I haven't either. Now, maybe we're just not, finding it. But remember, China, as Pat Wood has described with his work with Anthony Sutton, China is a huge it's the biggest technocracy in the world. Deep state, essentially, deep state operation. And let's face it, the deep state benefits from a pandemic because their economic system that you highlight and really dissect on a regular basis, so in such a great manner, the financial system is on wobbly legs worldwide. And what a better way to help cover up so that when the financial system starts coming down, people don't point at the central banks of the world that are part of the deep state and say, hey, wait a minute, this is the problem. No, instead, people will be pointing at, well, it was the virus. It was the virus that led to the systems to collapse, the financial systems to collapse. And we've always looked for, Dave, an event, a trigger event that was going to be the cover for the deep state as they bring their DEBT, debt-ridden system down. And we all thought it'd probably be a military event in North Korea, in Iran, in Syria, in Ukraine. But in fact, it appears that it could well have been this virus.
You said you don't think the deep state or the Western intelligence had anything to do with this. Do you think that they saw what was happening and they took it and they pushed it where the mainstream media took the story of this little virus being released in China and took it and made it bigger than it really was? Because, I know they're showing cases in many different places like Iran. They're saying, a couple cases in the United States, a couple cases in the UK, a couple cases here and there. But we have millions of people in all these different places and, 4 or 5 cases or 10 cases or 20 cases. That's not a lot at all. You think they saw an opportunity to take this and use this to their benefit?
Short answer is yes. And that's why I didn't close door 3 completely. I don't think the Western intelligence agencies, at least I haven't seen any evidence where they released it. On the other hand, did they jump on board with this to help push that entire narrative, as you said, worldwide about this issue? And yeah, I do think that the deep state international unit took what was happening there and are magnifying it. And it comes down to this, there are going to be people, Dave, that are not of Asian heritage that get this virus. I'm not, but some of the reasons are that those are individuals who are already immunosuppressed. Okay. So many people say, well, there's nothing you can do about this. Well, yeah, there actually is. And a couple of things are really basic and simple, but people think they laugh at you when you say it. But look, washing your hands is the single greatest way to reduce the viral or bacterial load that you experience. And so washing your hands before meals and after meals and before bed and after not just a public bathroom, but anytime you go to the bed, you're in a bathroom and you get out, just that alone will help. And then there are other things you can do to enhance your immune system so that it's optimized. And the deep state that runs the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry isn't happy. But one of the interviews I do a series with Dr. Peter Glidden, who's one of I believe the top naturopathic physician in the world. We do a series of studies. I think we've done 25 segments, and one of the issues was on coronavirus and boosting the immune system. We talk about things that can be done to boost your immune system that doesn't rely on big pharma. Now, they hate that. I mean, they hate that series. But we have we put information. One part of it is, washing your hands. That's part of it. But there are things you can do to boost your immune system. But I also believe that, people need to take other actions, because I think what they're going to try to do, Dave, is as the economic systems, we've seen the stock market kind of wobbling here for a week or so. I think it's going to wobble for a while longer. And I think that this is going to affect supply chains. So again, people will categorize this as conspiracy theory, but I see it as an insurance policy. There's nothing wrong with making sure that you have storable food and storable water. You don't have to have a year's supply. You don't have to have 6 months supply, but you should at least have at least a couple weeks to a month. You should make sure you have your medications, which is another issue, because one of the other issues we've delved into was the fact that, and we brought this forward several months ago, and now it's starting to get a little legs, but we spoke about with Rosemary Gibson, the fact that a huge amount of our pharmaceuticals and vitamins actually in this country are sourced out of China. And in fact, most penicillin products are sourced out of China. Vitamin C sourced out of China. And this has been going on for years, but nobody's been talking about it. And this is another side of this whole supply chain issue with China. But you should make sure and basic stuff, Dave, make sure you have some toilet paper at home. Make sure that you have some basic medical first aid supplies. Make sure you have storable food, storable water. Make sure, these are just basic things that many people say, that's bunker mentality. Well, maybe it is, but, ask some of the people in China right now if they wish they had some storable food, storable water at home when all this is coming down. And what I think is going to happen is you're going to see the deep state continue with their bought off lamestream fake media that's a tentacle of theirs, push this narrative of almost self-quarantining yourself and your family at home. And again, I think that there is a risk with this virus. On the other hand, I think we need to keep it in perspective, and there are things we can do without relying on the big pharmaceutical companies, that things we can do to protect ourselves.
Yeah, I when I see this, I see the deep state pushing this very, very hard. And most of the articles that are coming out have to do with the global economy, supply chains, the stock market coming down. And you see the IMF out there, the World Bank, you see the Fed out there, the ECB. They're all pretty much saying the same thing. And also you see it on CNBC, you see it on CNN. It's clogging the news cycle, this whole thing. And it's blocking everything else. And that's what everyone is looking at. And that's why I think Trump came out there and said, I believe that the vaccine is very close to being created. He also said, I believe the stock market is going to be doing fine, where he doesn't see a really big worry about this. I believe that he can use this to his benefit, which I think the white hats are using it to their benefit, because now the companies in China, they're looking at this and saying, something, maybe we shouldn't have all our eggs in one basket. Maybe we should diversify and not use this one supply chain that we've been using. The other thing is he wants the Fed to lower rates and push stimulus. This will give him ammunition to do that. And I think as the deep state, the mainstream media keep pushing this, I think it's going to die out just like everything else. I mean, we heard Zika virus. We had the Ebola scare.
Oh yeah, I remember
SARS. I mean, they just disappeared. Once there's an announcement that they have a cure for it, even though everyone doesn't have to take it, all of a sudden I think it's going to disappear. And I think they're allowing the deep state to use this because this is their ammunition that they're using. And once they use it up, that's it. They can't, what are they going to do with it? Boom, it's done. And that's it. And I think that's what Trump, the Patriots, and the rest, this is what I think they're trying to do here.
Well, I agree with you, Dave. The deep state, their fundamental issue in their playbook that they play all the time, their card, their big card. I want to say Trump card because but their primary card, their first, last, and always card is chaos. And this is where what you do, Dave, and what I try to do, I think is important, is we try to diffuse that chaos. And once the deep state realizes that, wait a minute, the public is getting wise to an issue, and the chaos is not being effective with this particular issue, they drop it and they move on. So I agree with you. I think President Trump is trying to temper and downplay the chaos, which adversely affects the deep state. And he's also trying to utilize it to, if you will, help the freedom movement. And so, and you mentioned that, they use these things to divert attention. And when they divert attention, they try to slide things in. And one of the things I think they're trying to slide through, and something I've recently spoken about, and you've heard Tucker Carlson touch on part of this, is this New Way Forward Act of immigration. The Schumers and Pelosi's of the world are saying, oh, with this coronavirus, this is really big, this is really terrible, and we need to quarantine, and we need to do, okay. But then when it comes to the southern border or northern border or any border, nobody's to get quarantined. Nobody's to get, and let's face it, Dave, and this has also gotten me in hot water where I've spoken about the southern border, is a number of these illegal aliens that are coming across are bringing diseases into our country that we felt we had already eradicated, that are no longer eradicated. Well, Dave, what's the difference if you die from coronavirus from China, or if you die from an infectious disease that comes from somebody that illegally came across our border from the south? I mean, dead is dead.
Right.
So they're trying to introduce this legislation, this New Way Forward Act, that essentially dismantles the immigration system, essentially dismantles enforcement of our immigration laws, and it provides funding for every person that has either been deported from our country, for whatever reason. It provides them funding to come back into our country and be admitted.
Yes.
I mean, this is crazy, right?
It's absolutely crazy. It makes
from a public health standpoint. When you have people that are saying, "Whoa, coronavirus, whoa, quarantine," and then there are 40 co-sponsors of this, including AOC and the Squad and all of them, and Pelosi, and then to say, "Oh, this legislation is what we need," it puts every American in harm's way. But I think they're trying to sneak this through Bill 5383, if people want to call their congressperson or their two senators or the White House and say, this House Bill 5383 cannot go through. It's one of the things they're trying to push through while the chaos of coronavirus is occurring.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They use all these different type of crises to push things in different ways and keep everyone distracted over here while they do something else. Now, we know that Trump and Barr and Durham, they have investigations going. Barr is prepared to declassify. We've seen the trial with Roger Stone and General Michael Flynn. Now, you just recently interviewed Barbara Flynn Redgate, and we have the Flynn case still going on. Mm-hmm. And he wants to change his plea. Sidney Powell is doing a fantastic job calling out the deep state prosecutors and everyone in the Department of Justice that was working with the Mueller organization to try to get Flynn. And every single time the Department of Justice tries to, do a backdoor type of plan or push, or they try to do something else, Sidney Powell stops them.
Yes, she does.
Yeah, she really does a great job.
He's very effective.
Yes. So with the Flynn case right now,
mm-hmm.
it seems that they haven't sentenced him.
No.
They keep talking about sentencing him.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't done it. I mean, they've already sentenced Roger Stone for more months than Anthony Weiner, who is a sex predator. for sexting, and all Roger Stone did was lie, and he got more months than Anthony Weiner. But why haven't they sentenced Flynn yet? What is the problem here? Or do you think Flynn, with Sidney Powell, has such a strong case, they're trying to figure out a way to keep this going long enough?
Well, I truly believe that if Sidney Powell was not General Flynn's attorney, now remember, she has not been his attorney since the outset. She just came on board in June of 2019 to be his attorney. He fired his previous attorneys, who were from the firm Covington and Burling out of Washington. Now, if that name sounds familiar, right? Former Attorney General Eric Holder is a partner in Covington. Covington has had its fingers in a lot of other people's pies, but one of the things that came out with our interview with Barbara Flynn Redgate, which is on our YouTube channel now, is that Covington, who reportedly was representing General Flynn from before his plea deal on December 1st, 2017 to mid-2019, when you get in the weeds and you look at the documents, they did, to be kind, you would say they did a very poor job of representing him. But I think if you're a realist, you look at these documents, as I have done, and it's obvious they were setting him up from the inside.
Yeah.
They were playing for the state to set him up. And I truly believe if it wasn't for Sidney Powell, General Flynn would have been sentenced long ago. And, many people say, and I get this, Dave, and people are very, very frustrated. You and I are frustrated as well, really. Yeah?
Right.
Yeah. People are saying, I don't see anything happening. Well, let me tell you something. The fact that General Flynn has not been sentenced, that nobody sees as a positive, is a huge positive. And the reason they haven't sentenced him is because part of the business model of the deep state is to make things up. And when that doesn't work, they start changing things up. Well, because General Flynn and his family have fought the deep state the whole way through this, they keep having to make stuff up. They keep having to change stuff up. And by the time they change things up, General Flynn, his family, and Sidney are in their back in their face, shutting them down again. So on February 14th of 2020, Dave, you and I heard a lot from a lot of people saying, and there's two things that happened that day. Most folks think only one thing happened. And what they think, the only thing that happened was Andrew McCabe got off.
Right.
That's when the letter went to McCabe's attorneys that he was not going to be prosecuted for leaking, that the inspector general, by the way, had recommended that he be prosecuted for. Okay. Well, that's true. That did occur. So, but there was something else that occurred on that day. And what occurred was that A.G. Barr announced he was taking the prosecution out of the hands of the prosecutors and having an independent review outside of Washington, out of the Northern District of Missouri, by the guy by the name of Jeff Jensen. Now, Jeff Jensen is a Trump appointee. I believe, based on everyone I have spoken to, he is not considered a puppet of the deep state. He does have a background in the past of being an FBI agent. Well, that could be bad if he was deep state affiliated, but it could be good because he knows the procedures. He knows how things are done. And the smoking gun in this, Dave, that people are not aware of was that when the FBI did the ambush interview of General Flynn on January 24th, 2017 at the White House, and Strzok and Pienka are the ones who interviewed him. When they get done with an interview, the FBI fills out a 302 form. Right. And that 302 form has to be entered into the Sentinel system of the government within 5 days. So he was interviewed on January 24th, 2017. It was supposed to be in January 29th. Well, that original 302, Dave, to this day is, quote, missing. And the reason it's missing is because those agents debriefed a number of individuals and said, we don't think General Flynn lied. We thought he was straightforward. He was, told the truth. But there are 4 other 302 forms in his file. One, February 10th, 2017, February 11th, February 14th, February 15th, all 2017. And all 4 of these are revisions, edits that were done on the original that is not in the folder, not in the file. But the question is who did the revisions? Well, it appears from information that's been unearthed by General Flynn and his defense team and Sidney Powell, well, that would be Andrew McCabe and Lisa Page, who were not in the room when he was interviewed, edited and revised the original 302, making it look like he lied when he did not. So if I'm Jeff Jensen, the independent person looking it's a smoking gun. I'm going to go, I want the original 302. And Van Grack, who's currently the prosecutor du jour on this, says, well, it's missing. My answer to that is BS, it's missing. Nothing gets missing in the Sentinel system. Give it to me. So if they give it to him, it's going to show what those guys originally stated. That Flynn was honest and his demeanor was straightforward and honest and truthful. So then if I'm Jensen, I'm going, wait a minute. You're charging him with lying when you're saying he was honest? Now let's say they don't give it to him. What's Jensen going to say? You lost the one piece of evidence that's needed to convict somebody? And by the way, I'm looking at a file with 4 other forms in it. Who edited these? Now you're tampering with an official government document. And this is why when people got all so bent out of shape, and I understand it about McCabe being let off on the leak issue, it's because there are bigger issues with McCabe, one of which is McCabe altered an official government document, that being the 302 forms of General Flynn's interview. The second is, as you know, Dave, McCabe was one of the 2 signers, him and Rosenstein, of the 4th FISA application on Carter Page, and application 3 and application 4 have already been deemed by the Justice Department to be fraudulent.
And can he take this to the next step where he could say, you know something? Let's take a look at the FISA warrant on Flynn. Well, if they declassify that, they're going to find out quite a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what was that predicated upon? And how about this one? How did they actually, they talked about a conversation. They had a transcript of a conversation between the then ambassador from Russia, Kislyak, and General Flynn. Well, wait a minute. Who recorded that? Well, wait, what kind of surveillance system did they use? Did they use an illegal surveillance system that was what's called a parallel platform, right? To get that information? Did you go through the FISA court to get that? If so, where's that FISA application? But it's even, but here's the thing, Dave, is that when I talk to folks that are in the Justice Department and folks that are prosecutors, they say, if the government doesn't hand over that original 302 form and and the prosecutors still state that it's missing, the case should immediately be thrown out right then and there. That Jensen should step up, yes, make the recommendation to Barr, say, you know what, they can't produce the evidence. It's done. It's over. Now, this whole business of moving the case out to Jensen, many people believe it's not a big deal and I'm making too much of it. I pass it on to somebody who's very versed and knowledgeable in Department of Justice procedures. And here's what I was told, direct quote. For AG Barr to bring in an outside U.S. attorney to review how the interview of General Flynn occurred and what was done with the documents after the interview by the FBI means only one thing. The Department of Justice is investigating a crime by the FBI perpetrated on General Flynn. If it was just a procedural issue, this would have been referred to the Inspector General and not an outside U.S. attorney.
Wow.
Let me tell you something. I consider Sidney Powell a friend. Dave, I don't know of another person in Washington who is an attorney who has the guts to do this. And I believe that Sidney Powell is going to get that case dismissed because she has the evidence. She has the facts. And she can't be intimidated.
That's true. Yeah.
She cannot. Now, many people say everybody can be intimidated. I think many people, most people can be intimidated. I don't think she can. And I believe when you see Eric Holder acting up like he's done this past 3 days, for example, this past week, he was going after investigative journalist Paul Sperry and telling him to shut the H up and stop, blah, blah, blah. He was hysterical. He was, and many people say, well, that's just, he's showing his teeth. No, that's desperation. That's panic. And you want to know why I think he's desperate and panicked? Because of Sidney Powell and General Flynn, because they have the goods on his law firm. Because what Barbara Flynn Redgate spoke about and presented on the interviews I did is they have the smoking guns, how Covington, that law firm, set General Flynn up. Dave, he signed that plea deal December 1st, 2017. And I'm going to tell you something that probably 99% of your listening audience doesn't know.
Okay.
Everybody says, well, if he didn't lie to the FBI, why did he sign a plea agreement that said that he did lie once to the FBI? Well, a couple reasons. One is they were telling him that if he didn't sign this plea agreement, they were going to come after his kid. They were going to bankrupt him and his entire family. But there's something else.
Really?
General Flynn, when he was at this meeting to sign the plea agreement, he said to his attorneys who were from Covington, before I sign this plea agreement, I want you to call the FBI. And I specifically want to know if the 2 agents who interviewed me, if they felt I lied. Did they document that that I lied? His attorneys left the room from Covington, and they came back. General Flynn was in the room, and his wife Lori were in the room. And the attorneys looked at him and said, the FBI confirmed that the agents who interviewed you felt you lied.
Wow.
Devin Nunes has come on record and said that when he was briefed and a number of other congressmen were briefed about the Flynn interview, they were told by the FBI that the 2 interviewing agents felt he was of sure demeanor and did not lie.
Yep.
The reason why Eric Holder is acting up is because he is a partner in that law firm that has been exposed.
That's it. Yeah.
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 Because it brings that whole house of cards down.
That's the only reason you would act out, because if Paul Sperry is digging, and he mentions something which exposes him, and that's when fear, panic kicks in, and that's when they lash out. And you see it. You see it firsthand.
Well, and look, the prosecutors, I don't think they've ever dealt with a general, let alone somebody like General Flynn. And the prosecutors, I don't think were prepared for Sidney Powell to be brought in, because remember her track record. In the past, the pet rat, the right-hand pet rat of Mueller's rat pack of 19 attorneys and 40 FBI agents was Andrew Weissman. And, he was the one who prosecuted the Enron situation in Arthur Andersen accounting firm. And Sidney was the one who had those decisions overturned and had him on the ropes for prosecutorial misconduct.
Yep.
He knew what she was about. And this is why I think Weissman has kind of been behind the curtain a bit, because he knew the last time he messed with Sidney what happened. And I believe they didn't think that General Flynn would bring her in. That they thought they had him buffaloed because they had his own attorneys who were playing for the deep state, filling his head just with that fact about what they told him right before he signed that plea agreement. They had his head filled with nonsense, with mis and disinformation. And in fact, before he walked into the courtroom, he walked into a courtroom after the December 1st, 2017, but he also walked in another courtroom a year later when Covington was still representing him on December 18th, 2018. And before he walked in that courtroom, something else that your listeners don't know, the same attorney said, if the judge asks you if you have any reservations about your plea, if he asks you to pull your plea back, under no circumstances do that. Because if you do that, the prosecutors will come back at you. They'll go after your son. They'll go after your family. So he's not going to give you any time. Just suck it up. Now, one of the other reasons why is they were covering their own rear ends, Dave. Initially, when they started to go after General Flynn, they said, well, you have to file these what are called FARA forms, Foreign Agents Registration Act. Well, he didn't have to do that because he was never working for a foreign country. He did work for a company that was based in Turkey, but they weren't associated with the government. He wasn't doing government work but they made him sign those. And when they made him sign those, the forms were filled out wrong. Who filled the forms out wrong? Covington. They set him up.
And this is why they're investigating Covington right now.
Right.
Yes.
And this is why Eric Holder is acting off he's gone off the rails.
Yeah, they're panicking over this.
And let me tell you something. One of the questions I know you have is, are we going to see mass arrests?
Right.
I'd love that. I'd love it. And in that mass arrest, when you love to see this line of people all handcuffed together, a Barack, a Hillary, a Brennan, a Clapper, a Comey, a Mueller, a McCabe, a Strzok, a Page, a Baker from the FBI. It would be nirvana for the freedom.
It would be.
But I think before we get at least to the Baracks and Hillarys, you're going to see other people go down. And I always said one of the first people I felt would go down would be Brennan. I still think he's going to be one of the people go down early in the process. But I also think, and you're starting to see this from President Trump, who's starting to signal it, when he starts saying, wait a minute, what about these 19 attorneys and 40 FBI agents, all on Mueller's team, who knew the FISA applications were fraudulent, yet continued to push this hoax, yet continued to disrupt our country for 3 years? I think you're going to start to see some huge pressure as far as prosecutions against that team. And I believe a number of those are going to flip on each other.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
But I also believe, Dave, because look, these are not hardcore criminals. They're criminals, but they're not seasoned criminals. And I think a lot of these folks that are right now being looked at are soft and will turn in a second to try to save themselves. But I also believe that the John Brennans of the world and the James Clappers of the world are also going to face the music. And I would have hoped it would have occurred already. It has not. Right. But I believe it will. And many people say, why has it not? Well, all you have to do is look at what happened to Roger Stone. As long as there are judges at a high level that do what Amy Berman Jackson did, let's say they decide to press charges tomorrow against Obama. Okay? And we all, yes, long overdue. He abused the system. He used intelligence agencies. It is the single greatest illegal surveillance act and criminal act in our country's history, what he and his administration were involved in. If they bring him into a court, what are the odds that an Amy Berman Jackson is going to make a ruling, let alone a conviction, on a Barack Obama. And as long as we have judges that are tainted, and many people say we'll always have judges that are tainted. Well, okay, but let's face it, Dave, if you told me a year ago that the Ninth Circuit Court, that Trump would have flipped it,
yeah,
I would have told you, Dave, I'm not sure what you're drinking, but get me some of that.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
But today, the Ninth Circuit has been flipped. And for how many decades had that been seen? Well, that's untouchable. That can never be fixed. It's off the rails. It's always going to be off the rails. It's just a wasteland. Well, no longer. So I do believe that and there's a reason why President Trump keeps pushing all these. We have 180 new federal judges that have been, and some people are saying, who cares? Oh, no.
It's very important.
Well, you know what? If they were more deep state players and not freedom-loving, rule of law judges, I would say, yeah, who cares? But from everything I've heard from my contacts in the legal world, no, these people are pretty hardcore freedom, rule of law based judicial appointees. And that doesn't play in the deep state's hands.
And I think these upper echelon individuals, I know a lot of people say they're going to be arrested, and we hope they're arrested, but I don't see some of them allowing themselves to be arrested and then brought on trial. I think when that time gets closer, I have a very funny feeling that some of them will try to flee, try to hide.
I agree.
I believe some of them will come down with illnesses.
Yeah.
They might even say, oh, the coronavirus, I'm infected. Who knows? But I feel like they have an escape plan, because I can't see Hillary, Obama sitting in a trial, letting everyone look at them and everyone judge them, because it would be a disaster for them and their family. So I think they would take the other way out of this situation, just like McCain. I know a lot of people say, oh no, he died of natural, he had a disease or whatever. But it's just funny how it happened at the exact moment when everything was starting to go down. And I think that they're going to follow suit. If it ever,
and I agree with you, Dave. And we've actually already seen them beta tested with Mueller. I grew up in Chicago, and we used to have a term for when a high profile mafia person got in front of the jury and all of a sudden had this illness develop. We called it the Sicilian flu, right? You saw it on display with Mueller, right? Yeah. He gets up in front of the country, and he was touted as the G-man that was going to take down Trump, and he was going to be stellar in that thing. And you watched him, you listened to him, and the takeaways were, my gosh, what's wrong with this guy? And, well, if he's like that, there must have been some other people doing this dastardly stuff, because this guy can't even think his way out of a paper box. He couldn't have been involved in that. Dave, I really think that was the beta test for what we're going to see from a number of these players as the days and weeks and months go on. We're going to see a whole lot of this Sicilian flu thing.
So where do you think we're headed here? I mean, do you think a D-class is about to happen? Do you think that Durham's investigation is going to wrap up and we're going to move to the next level and see an arrest? So
what I've been told is actually for the content to come out that came out in the Inspector General's report in December of 2019, that there was already some declassification by Barr for the contents of that report to be made public. Right. But there's a lot more declassification to occur. And a lot of this, and what's so frustrating to us and our viewers and listeners who are well-versed in the criminal acts of the deep state, right outside that window in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, right? Some of them still have their, Bernie 2016 signs out, right? They never took down. Not that they put them back up again. They never took them down. But what the drip, drip, drip that's so frustrating for us, this slow, drawn out process, is actually its approach is directed at those that are still ambivalent, that still have their head in the sand. And even the people out that window in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor have been waking up. I have seen this. It's incredible. Over the past year, people who were at my throat about this is all conspiracy theory, this is all, now are like, this is painful. I don't like Trump, they will say. But you know what? I'm liking less what was done to him even more. By that, they mean that they actually are so upset now as this drip, drip, drip. If it comes all out at once, right? If it's like a fire hose, people can't drink the water. They can't get a gulp, right? But if it's a drip, 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 it's very frustrating for all of us. But for the rest of folks that aren't as tuned in, and let's face it, there are a whole lot of folks that aren't tuned in, this drip, drip, drip is working. I see it every day. I see it every day.
I agree.
If I lived in a conservative community or a complete freedom-based community, but where I live and work, the change in the past year has been enormous. And it's because of the drip, drip, drip. I think if he would have fire hosed this out there with all this stuff just hitting all at once, I think the people out there and a lot of people that aren't tuned in would have been, oh, well, I don't know. I still think it's all conspiracy theory. That's not happening, Dave. So what's so very frustrating to all of us and all of our listeners, it's actually working, I believe, on those that are we're less inclined to not even support President Trump, but even listen to President Trump.
I agree.
And another event that I think broke a lot of people open was what Pelosi did after that State of the Union address. She thought that was a power move, and it was obviously premeditated, and somebody got in her ear to do it, or I don't think she thought of it herself, but she thought it was a good idea. But when he presented the State of the Union mosaic of what really makes America great, which, were the accomplishments that he kept saying were not just me, Donald Trump, but our accomplishments, the American people. And then when he pointed to all those individuals and told their stories, that was a mosaic that he created about what makes America great and will make America great in the future, as long as it's based on a freedom-based platform versus a socialist platform. But when she tore up that speech, Americans said, wait a minute. She's not just tearing up a speech of President Trump's. She's tearing up what makes America great. She's disrespecting that Tuskegee Airman, his grandson, that family whose husband came down those stairs to be reunited. The parents who lost their daughter at the hands of al-Baghdadi. You might disagree with him, but the guy who transformed radio, Rush Limbaugh. When she did that, she was disrespecting every one of those people and all of the American public. And people got that.
Yeah.
And I don't, and Pelosi and the deep state feel as though, okay, that happened and that's over. No. You see, I think, Dave, that when people walk into that voting booth in November, they're going to remember that.
They're going to remember it, and they're going to show them how they really feel by voting a lot of these people out of office.
And if I was President Trump, and I've made this recommendation to folks that work with him, if I was going to run one ad over and over again, it would be him briefly mentioning in his State of the Union address all these people. And then at the end of the commercial, I'd have Nancy Pelosi documented ripping up the speech.
Yeah, powerful.
And you know what, Dave? It makes Ronald Reagan's commercial of Morning in America, it'd make it look feeble.
Dave, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see all your work?
Well, a couple things. They can join us for the radio show. It's live and it's free every Sunday, 2 to 5 Eastern. They just go to davejanda.com and hit the listen live button. It'll take them to Wham Talk 1600 streaming service, hit play, and off it goes. We're also available on our YouTube channel, and I am not prolific like Dave from X22. I don't do 10 to 12, sometimes 14 YouTubes like you do, Dave. I don't know how you do it. I do 2, and 2 is keeps Dave pretty busy, but I put up a couple new YouTube presentations every week. Operation Freedom's a YouTube channel. And then we have the website, davejanda.com, where we upload information on the free public side, but we also have a subscription service with extra shows, our WTF Geopolitical show, our Insider Insight show, our Department of Advanced Research show, all the archives for all of our shows. The podcasts are available 24/7 for our radio show, not just for 1 week, but for all the shows all the way back to when we started in October of 2010. And I thank you, Dave, for everything you do, how you do it. And I know you take a lot of grief. But I thank you for willing to put up with the grief to let people know what the bought-off lamestream fake media will never present. And I thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And I thank you for doing everything that you do. Your radio show is fantastic. And the information and the guests that you have on your show just give incredible information that you can't find anywhere else. And you really dive deep into the subject matter to let people know what's really going on. And I appreciate that. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. And once again, thank you very much for taking the time out for being on the spotlight. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on here. And thanks for coming back each time I ask you.
Oh, Dave, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure. And I thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.